3 players challenged the ball. One of them abandoned their mark. Who's to blame? And how can we measure this? I'm managing Durham, bringing the dark arts to the WSL too. That's deep defending, explosive counters, and a whole heap of shithousery. The first season went well, a solid mid-table finish with the best defensive record in the league. And I'm doing it with Moneyball, using performance data to find players undervalued by the market. But that means I need to calculate abstract ideas like defensive discipline or tactical fouling. So here's how I did it. Let's start with defensive discipline. A key component of our setup is that we are a low block, low defensive line, low pressing team. Our priority is holding shape, keeping play in front of us and not allowing the opposition through. To measure this, I'm splitting defensive actions into 2 groups, proactive and reactive. In the proactive camp, we've got tackles and pressures, actions where we are actively trying to dispossess the opposition. In the reactive camp, I've put blocks, clearances and interceptions, actions where we are responding to what the opposition has done. Now, I want players who excel at the reactive, but that doesn't just mean they perform a lot of those actions. It needs to be relative. They don't just need to be reactive, they need to not be proactive. Let's take Gotham FC's Tierna Davidson as an example. She completed a combined 5.29 reactive defensive actions per 90. She also completed 4.49 proactive defensive actions per 90. As a proportion of actions, 45% were proactive, 55% were reactive. But is that good? We need to understand what those average proportions should look like, and then find players with a higher reactive percentage than expected. So that's what I've done. I've exported every player in a playable league in FM who played more than 1,000 minutes. Guide in the description below. I have then calculated combined proactive and reactive actions per 90, and broken each down as a percentage. From there we can work out the averages for each position. So a defensive midfielder, on average, is 64% proactive, 36% reactive, whereas a central defender is 42% proactive, 58% reactive. Back to Tierna Davidson, and we can now see that despite performing a higher number of reactive defensive actions, she is proportionately more proactive than the average centre-back. Still following? Good news, this is as complicated as it gets. The important takeaway is that I'm looking for players with an above average amount and proportion of reactive actions. Right, tactical fouling next. Perhaps the greatest artistic component of the dark arts, tactical fouling is about disrupting flow, preventing a counterattack before it can even happen, or just trying to wind up the opposition. It's gamesmanship rather than violence. Think Robbie Savage, not Pepe. So I'm looking for players that concede a lot of free kicks, but don't pick up a lot of yellow cards. To calculate this, I've exported fouls made, offsides, yellow and red cards. Offsides count as a foul, so we need to deduct this from fouls made. And then I've calculated a booking rate by dividing total cards by total fouls. And once again, I can work out the averages. Wingbacks make the most fouls per 90, strikers the least, whereas attacking midfielders are booked least frequently and central defenders the most. There is a third criteria, header win rate. I didn't include this in the defensive actions because there's no way to discern the difference between proactive and reactive. So let's take a look through the squad, through that lens, to see where we're at. I've created these profiles. The action profile shows the proportion, proactive on the left, reactive on the right. The dashed line represents the average for the position. I want players with the pink reactive bar below the average line. Fouls, booking rate and header win rate have a little indicator to show which percentile they're in. Red for 0 to 25, orange for 25 to 50, yellow for 50 to 75, and green for 75 and above. Booking rate is inverted. so the lower the booking rate, the better. I want above the 50th percentile for each of those metrics. Only one of our centre-backs, Lucy Watson, meets all the criteria. In fact, she's the only one who is reactive enough for what we want. So Wilson, Saliki and Robson, they can leave, their contracts are expiring. Neither of our right-backs meet the defensive profile. Briggs has the foul to booking ratio nailed, but she wants out anyway. Grace Eyre is under contract, or was. Crystal Palace came knocking and we sold her for 30k. At left back, only Foster played enough minutes and she was worse than the right backs. She leaves at the end of her contract. Ella Wilson gets a new deal, however, purely because we're running out of players. In midfield, I'm not as concerned about header win rate. Dee Bradley and Ag's loans are due to come to an end and it's unlikely we can afford them. Tyler Toland is the standout of the rest, so she stays. Molly Lambert and Beth Heppel's booking rate is a little higher than I'd like, but they can stay too. Stobbs and Addison will leave. Up front is reasonably solid, all meeting the defensive profile. Eade's booking rate is high, but she's also our best aerial outlet. Speckmeyer didn't play enough and her contract is up, so she leaves. We're down to just 10 players, 2 of which are goalkeepers. That's not great, and it's only going to get worse. Lambert wants more than we can afford, so she's now at Crystal Palace. And Heppel wants to play for a bigger club. Who am I to stand in her way? She's gone to Bristol City for 135k. So that's just 8 players left. Time to check the youth team. Lily Coulson is a centre-back with no strength, but otherwise solid fundamentals. Grace Monkhouse is an attacking midfielder with no strength, but is a capable passer. Daisy Clark is a striker with no strength. I'm sensing a theme here. She does have good ball control though, so should be serviceable. And Lydia Pennock is a striker with, you guessed it, no strength, but her movement and work rate are appealing. That doesn't really address our positions of need though. We need reinforcements. But before we can bring anyone in, what's our budget? Let's look at the finances. It's grim reading. In the first season, we lost 250k. That's despite having the 3rd lowest wage budget in the league. In fact, at just shy of 14.5k per week, we can't really bring it down that much at all. You see, the league has a minimum wage, £400 per week for players aged 19 or over, £490 per week at 22. But basic wage is only part of the budget. Appearance fees and bonuses count towards it too. As you can see from the discrepancy here, there's an estimated £3,100 per week in bonuses. That's 20% of the budget. So let's assume we put together a squad of 25 players, all under 22, all on minimum wage. That's 10k per week. Add 20% bonuses, and that's 12k per week. We're not going to have an entire squad aged under 22. Nonetheless, I'm going to try and get the wage budget beneath 12k per week, and that means a lot of minimum wage contracts. There are 4,728 players interested in joining us. Not all will earn a work permit though, so actually that's 637. Seems a lot, but how many do we have data for? Just 66. And how many of them are above average for volume and proportion of reactive actions? 28. I don't need goalkeepers, wingers or strikers. And we're down to 20 now. Look, I'm used to having a surfeit of options and internal deliberation over who to sign, but once I take wage demands into account, the signings kinda decided themselves. So let's introduce them. At centre-back, Reina Nagashima and Rebecca Matthias, the only centre-backs who also won an above average number of headers. Their booking rate is higher than I'd like, but beggars can't be choosers. Matthias took the minimum. Nagashima becomes our highest earner on £600 per week. At right back, Yuki Seno and Laura Lund. Seno is more reactive, better in the air, and can cover at centre back. Lund has the better fouling profile, and at 20 is one for the future. Lund takes the minimum. Seno asked for an extra 10 quid. At left back, Chelsea Blissett. Doesn't foul enough, but was literally the only choice, which she leveraged into a £550 per week deal. In midfield, Dee Bradley returns, and she'll be joined by Mia Watanabe, Ella Kinzet, and Jasmine McQuaid. All are sufficiently reactive and sufficiently dark artsy. All took the minimum wage, except McQuaid, who held out for another tenner. That's 9 players in, plus 4 promoted from the youth team. 12 players out. Technically, we've got a bigger first team. We made 165k profit, and our wage budget is under 11k per week, making us the lowest spenders in the league by quite some margin. Truth be told, I don't know how I've done. I'm happy with the signings, but with such a small pool of players to choose from, I worry that we might be missing a little something. Nonetheless, let's see what it means for our tactic. This is what we used last season, a funky 3-5-2 in possession that drops into a 4-4-2 out of it. It was makeshift, a response to our lack of central defenders and midfielders. Lucy Watson is a converted left winger. Grace Eade is a converted left winger. Angela Addison was a converted left winger, whilst Grace Eyre was a converted right back. Those last two are gone, and I think we can now embrace something closer to what I truly want. Which is this. 2 formations I am both calling 3-5-2s, because the left winger is really a striker. Previously they were a splitting outlet, just now we're splitting them out even further. By using them as an inside forward, they maintain that width when we initially win the ball, but eventually become a striker. The 2 central midfielders become an attacking midfielder and box-to-box midfielder in possession. Essentially, I still view them as central midfielders. Just one I want to get close to the striker immediately to pick up loose balls and knockdowns. The other I want to be a little more restrained, choosing to attack the box late. Player instructions are minimal. The wing-backs are asked to cross from deep. The centre forward holds up the ball. The attacking midfielder moves into channels. That's it. Team instructions haven't changed. Much more direct, higher tempo, wider width. Counter-attacking, time wasting, play for set pieces. We pass into space and distribute quickly. Out of possession, as mentioned earlier, it's a low block, low defensive line, low pressure. We drop off more, but we tackle harder. We trap outside and... I lied. There's one change, and it kind of needs a bit more explaining. I've switched from invite crosses to stop crosses, and this is as a result of being able to change to a back 5. In a back 4, when the full-back engages, the remaining defenders need to cover the low cross, the opposition, and the far post. That requires a midfielder to drop back situationally, or the full-back to stay narrow, and a wide midfielder to defend the wide area. With a back 5, the rest of the defence are already adequately positioned to handle the threat, so the full-back can be aggressive. This has also impacted the roles selected. Previously I had covering centre-backs and screening defensive midfielders. With 6 players now centrally, I don't need to be quite so passive. There's no stoppers or pressers, I'm still prioritising reactive defending. So our depth chart now looks something like this. Defence looks thin, but Yuki Seno and Dee Bradley can both provide cover there. Otherwise we've got at least 2 players per position. I think we're ready. Let's see how it does. Starting with the good, the opening game of the season, the very first minute of the season. And Jasmine McQuaid scores on her debut. Mia Watanabe finished 3rd in September's goal of the month with this 25-yard grubber. We picked up our first League Cup points with a draw against Sunderland. Which is also the bad. We were once again knocked out in the group stage. Sunderland bested us in the league too, a 2-0 defeat, which would be the only time we conceded twice in the WSL too. At the halfway stage we were 3rd, just 2 points shy of undefeated Newcastle. We would shortly fall 3-1 to Arsenal in the 4th round of the FA Cup, to Charlton 2-1 as McAteer slipped innuendo. Wins over Southampton, Forest, Birmingham and Wolves got us back on track, before a draw against Ipswich. With 5 games remaining we were joint top, our defence impenetrable, our attack inept. Injuries had decimated us, Our subs consisted of just one player older than 20 for our derby against Sunderland. That couldn't stop Layla McFarlane from giving us the lead, nor could it really be blamed for Adedini's equaliser. 17-year-old Pennock came off the bench to set up McQuaid to earn us bragging rights. 11th place Sheffield United next, and a 94th minute winner from Hannah Blake. Sunderland had done us a favour, drawing 0-0 with Newcastle, and we were top of the league. Blake was at it once again, nodding in against Watford, before Chelsea Blissett registered her first assist to set up McQuaid. Just 2 games remain, the next at home to Newcastle. Win, and the league title is ours. Jordan Nobbs had different ideas though. Her free kick rattled the bar. Another free kick followed, Peltonen's shot blocked. We could not clear our lines though, and Peltonen's back heel set up Nobbs to give Newcastle the lead. We are nothing if not resilient. Lucy Watson's long ball fell into the path of McQuaid to steer wide. But in the dying moments, Watanabe would play and Watson smack back off the bar. Newcastle leapfrog us, and with a home game against Watford to end their season, the title is theirs. Service is resumed. After the success of Juventus, I almost forgot that falling at the final hurdle is kind of my MO. That is the way of Musterman. But it's not over. Our goal difference means we still need at least a point to make the playoff, where Everton lie in wait. 2 minutes in against already relegated Lewes, Hannah McFarlane settled the nerves. 10 minutes into the second half, she lacked onto Seno's long ball and put the tie beyond doubt. Wait, what? Newcastle were held to a goalless draw and we are champions. We're heading to the Super League, baby! We did it off the back of an all-time defensive season. Just 12 goals conceded in 22 games. We should have conceded more, but 19.99 XG against from 318 shots against meant our opponents averaged just 0.06 XG per chance. By comparison, Birmingham were next best at 0.08 XG against per chance. We had the least possession once again. We conceded the most fouls, but picked up the 3rd most bookings, which puts our booking rate somewhere in the middle of the pack. We made the 2nd most blocks and clearances, 4th for interceptions. Our header win rate was improved, but not necessarily noteworthy. These are all very good signs, but assessing our players will be tricky. Injuries meant that multiple players played in multiple positions, and we'll need to analyse properly. That's for next episode, where we need to address the attack and somehow survive the Super League. See you then. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like or maybe even subscribing. Your support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to join these wonderful folks currently adorning your screen, you can become a member or Patreon. Details are in the description.